The Hardy Boys, The House on the Cliff. Previously in Chapter 23, Rescue, Fenton Hardy and his sons have been recaptured. Snackley, the smuggler boss, gloats about outsmarting the Hardys, telling his henchmen to take them out to the Chinaman's boat for disposal. He tells his man if they make any trouble to just shoot them. As they are being herded downstairs to the underground dock, one of the smugglers bursts into the room, warning that the police are coming down the lane. Snackley leaps into action, trying to quickly get down to the cave and escape. But in the haste, the lights go out, and the Hardys see their chance to attack their captors. Meanwhile, outside there is an uproar as the house is surrounded by state troopers. Snackley panics and makes a break for it, but is followed by the Hardys. Snackley confronts a prisoner, Jones, in a lower room and threatens to silence him for good. But Fenton Hardy rushes him in time, grappling with him on the mud floor. Fenton is able to seize Snackley's revolver and subdues him. Snackley, realizing he is beaten, gives up. Hardy turns to the captive Jones, telling him he will be back. It looks like the Hardys have finally prevailed, but Snackley's crew need to be rounded up and the entire gang corralled, including the Chinaman in the harbor. Join us for the conclusion of The House on the Cliff. Chapter 24, The Roundup, and Chapter 25, The Mystery Explained. Chapter 24, The Roundup. The Hardy Boys, in the meantime, were in the thick of the struggle. Frank fought desperately with the smuggler he had assailed in the living room of the house, while Joe raced across the yard toward the trapdoor leading to the underground caves. He found that although 3 of the smugglers had been captured by officers in the yard, and that as many more were fighting to escape, none of the police had as yet learned of the trapdoor down which some of the men had disappeared. With a shout to a nearby officer who had just succeeded in clapping the handcuffs on one of the smugglers, Joe made his way down the stairs. He heard the officer running over to the edge of the trap and saw the gleam of the flashlight. "Some of them got out this way," Joe shouted back to the officer. The man called to one of his companions, and then footsteps clattered on the stairs as Joe went on. He reached the door that opened into the chamber where his father had been prisoner, but on entering the room, he found it empty. There were evidences of hasty flight, and the door on the far side of the room was wide open. "Secret passages, eh?" exclaimed one of the officers as he came into the room. He was a state trooper in uniform. Joe led the way out through the opposite door and down the stairs that led toward the bottom of the cliff. The trooper who had spoken illuminated the way with his flashlight, and they clattered on down the stairs until they reached the storage room. Here, everything was in confusion. The escaping smugglers had evidently endeavored to take with them what goods they could, probably the smaller packages containing drugs, for boxes and parcels were overturned and strewn about the floor. "You seem to know this place pretty well," said one of the troopers, as Joe led the way across to the opposite door and stepped out onto the landing. "I've been here before, got in this way," he answered. "There's a water cave below this passage. They've probably made their getaway in the boat." They hastened down the passageway and came at last to the cave. As Joe expected, the boat was gone. "They got away," he said in disappointment as the trooper turned the flashlight on to the channel between the rocks. There was a shout from the darkness of the cove. "Give us a light," they heard. Joe gave a shout of joy. It was Tony Preto's voice. Then Joe and the troopers with him heard the steady beat of a motorboat. Joe seized the flashlight and ran out along the path leading to the entrance of the cave. The motorboat was not many yards away. Tony had been searching for the channel. "Right this way," Joe called out. "Head towards the right of the cave, and you'll be in deep water. A little further. Good." As the motorboat drew nearer, he saw that it was filled with men and that a rowboat was being towed behind. "We got 'em," cried Tony exultantly. "They were just getting out of the cove in the boat when we came up." "Who's with you?" asked Joe. "Police. The rest of them went up the shore road in a car." "We've caught the whole gang then. They raided the house and got the rest of the smugglers. We thought these fellows had made a getaway." "No chance, although it was mighty close. They pretty nearly slipped out of the cove right under our noses." The boat came to a stop beside the natural wharf of rock. One of the two officers, revolvers in hand, clambered out. 3 of the smugglers had been captured while trying to escape from the cove in the rowboat. "If they'd got out, we would never have caught them," said Joe. "They were heading out towards a ship." "A ship?" exclaimed one of the officers, a burly man in plain clothes. He stepped forward. "Did they say anything about a ship?" "A man named Li Chang has a ship lying in wait outside the bay," Joe said. "I heard them talking about it." "Good," exclaimed the burly man. "Now we'll capture the whole outfit." He turned to Tony. "I suppose your boat is good for another little run?" "I'll say it is, sir." "I want as many officers as we can spare," said the burly man. "We'll go out and find that ship." "Li Chang, did you say?" he added, turning to Joe. "That was his name." "I know this ship. We've been trying to catch that villain for years. Darst, go on up and see how the rest of the men made out at the house on the cliff, and take as many officers as they can spare. There's a passage up through the rocks, I take it." "Regular staircase all the way," remarked Darst, one of the raiding officers. "Good. Don't lose any time." The 3 smugglers were taken out of the boat and handcuffed, then escorted up the stairs, while the burly man, who was the chief of a squad of federal agents undertaking a drive against the smugglers on the part of the coast, remained with the motorboat. Within a short time, Darst returned with 3 more officers. He reported that a clean sweep had been made at the house. "They have 'em all handcuffed and sitting in the kitchen," he said. "Mr. Hardy got Snackley." "Snackley?" exclaimed the federal man. "Is it his gang?" "Yes, sir. He got Snackley in the cellar. One of his sons tackled Redhead Blount, one of Snackley's sidekicks, and held him down until the police came in. When we brought our 3 in, that finished the roundup. It does so far. We're going out and grab Li Chang from that ship, and that'll clean everything up." The officers got into the motorboat, and Joe clambered in beside Tony Preto, who was at the wheel. The craft backed out of the channel into the deeper water of the cove, then sped out into Barmet Bay. "Once we get out of the bay, we should see her lights," said the federal officer. "Li Chang probably has his ship anchored just off the coast." This proved to be the case. The lights of the vessel were soon descried, and the motorboat sped toward it through the night. When the boat drew alongside, the federal man roared out, "Ahoy there!" A voice answered in Chinese. "Speak English," roared the officer. "Throw over a ladder or we'll open fire on you." "Who's there?" "The police." Jabbering voices and running footsteps suddenly created a commotion. One of the troopers fired his revolver into the air, and very promptly a ladder was lowered over the side of the vessel. "That's better," said the federal man, as he clambered up over the rail, revolver in hand. "I'll just talk to your skipper for a minute." The capture of Li Chang was without incident. When he was told that Snackley and the gang were captured, the Chinaman, who was a small, wizened little fellow with a villainous countenance, blandly submitted to arrest and consented to be taken ashore. There were only 2 or 3 members of the crew aboard, the others having shore leave, so 2 of the federal men were left in charge of the ship until relief could be sent from Bayport and the motorboat made its way back to the cove. The roundup was complete. Snackley's smuggling gang had been completely broken up. Chapter 25. The Mystery Explained. The Hardy Boys were the heroes of Bayport when the news of the capture of Snackley and his men spread throughout the city the next day. As for Tony Preto, he was the envy of all the chums of the 2 lads. "Tony has all the luck," bemoaned Chet Morton, as the boys were all sitting in the barn back of the Hardy home next afternoon. This barn, which had been fitted up as a gymnasium, was a meeting place for the lads on occasions of importance. "We had to have a motorboat," said Frank. "Believe me, I was wishing more than once that the whole crowd was along." "And you'll get the reward for capturing Snackley?" asked Phil Cohen. "Not all of it. Dad gets half. Joe and I split the rest." "You haven't any kick coming? What's going to happen to Snackley?" "He'll probably go to the electric chair," answered Frank soberly. "Why?" "He murdered Felix Palooka, the miser." "Murdered him?" "Yes. Dad found that out in his investigations. Dad suspected all along that there was some connection between Snackley and the house on the cliff, especially when he found that Snackley and Palooka had been related. He went out to find out what he could, but the smugglers saw him and captured him." "What about that fellow they had imprisoned in the cellar?" questioned Biff Hooper. "Didn't you say Snackley was just going to kill him when your father saved him?" "That was the young fellow we saved in the bay that day, the young chap who told us his name was Jones. It wasn't his real name at all. His name was Yates, and he was one of the smugglers." "Why was Snackley chasing him that day?" asked Perry Robinson. "It seemed that Yates got angry because he didn't get his full share of the money from the last smuggling trip, so he threatened to tell the police on Snackley. The smugglers locked him up, but he got away in one of the motorboats, so they chased him down and ran him down. They thought to have killed him in the explosion, or else drowned him, but Joe and I managed to bring him ashore. We left him at the Kane farmhouse, but the smugglers came along next day and kidnapped him. They kept him prisoner in the cellar of the Palooka house after that. I still can't understand about those yells and shrieks we heard the day we were out at the farmhouse," put in Phil Cohen. "That was just to frighten us away. One of the men in the gang is a sort of half-wit, and they had him posted there to frighten people off by yelling and shrieking whenever anyone showed up around the place. He was the chap who stole our tools from the motorcycles," explained Frank. "But after our visit," added Joe, "they thought it was too dangerous and that there might be an investigation. So they put Redhead and his wife and one of their men there to pose as renters of the place." "So there weren't any ghosts after all?" exclaimed Jerry Gilroy. "Nary a ghost," laughed Frank. "Snackley explained everything this morning in a confession. The whole gang is locked up, even to Li Chang. Yates, the young fellow they had kept prisoner so long, told the story first. He turned state's evidence and told how long the smuggling had been going on, how Snackley had made use of the house on the cliff after killing Palooka, how he fixed up the tunnels in the cliff. He told everything." It seems that Palooka had the smuggling idea in the first place, and he spent years fixing up those caves and tunnels. When everything was ready, he called in Snackley. But Snackley didn't like to share with anyone who had a right to a voice in the affair, so he killed the old man, took his money, and brought the smuggling gang in there. Yates told all that. He told so much of it that Snackley saw there was no use bluffing any longer, so he admitted the whole story. "Gosh," sighed Chet, "just my luck I was there in time to get scared to death by that half-wit, and there in time to get bawled out and chased off the farm by Redhead and his wife. But I missed out on all the fun at last." Not much fun," declared Joe. "It didn't seem funny to us when the smugglers caught us in the cave just as we were getting Dad free. And it wasn't much fun hiding in that attic with the bullets coming through the floor, 19 to the dozen," added Frank. "I thought every minute was going to be my last." "No, I guess it wasn't any too funny then," admitted Chet. "You deserve every cent you get out of the reward." "We'll treat the whole gang to a feed as soon as we collect," Joe promised. "Whee!" shouted Chad, turning a handspring. "Now you're talking." The Hardy Boys kept their word. Soon after, they had received their share of the reward, which was presented to them with many glowing words and congratulations from the federal authorities, who had long been trying to put Snackley behind bars. They gave a dinner in the barn that eclipsed any similar feed in the history of Bayport. "I hope the Hardy Boys solve a mystery every week," said Chat as he confronted his third dish of ice cream. "And I hope they celebrate every success in the same way." The Hardy Boys were not destined to solve a mystery every week, but it was not long before they plunged into a maze of events which were fully as exciting as those which led to the finding of the Tower treasure and those that followed their first visit to the house on the cliff. Tony Preto, conscious of the envying glances of the other lads because he had anticipated in the eventful climax to the mystery of the house on the cliff, scooped up the last of the ice cream and said, "Once I wanted my father to buy an automobile, and he bought a motorboat instead. Now he wants to sell the boat and buy an automobile. Just let him try it. That boat gave me more fun in one day than I'd ever had since we came to the States." The end. I hope you enjoyed The Hardy Boys, The House on the Cliff by Franklin W. Dixon. Join us again soon for another adventure.